Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is a video that a lot of people might be waiting for, and it is the 10 top favourite reads of 2021. So I read 120 books in 2021 and these are my top 10 favourites. I say top 10, I may have to branch out a little bit. If you do like this video, please hit that thumbs up, comment down below any other videos you would like to see in the future. I do read all of my comments, so I will see your comment, and let's just dive right into all these fantastic books. Alright. Okay, I have a lot of books to talk about, and it's more than 10 books because I couldn't decide, and I genuinely don't think I have a favourite of this year, so it's going to be difficult, but I'm just going to talk about all of them and probably leave my absolute favourites to the end of the video. I just want to let you know that all of these books that I've decided to include in this video are all brand new books to me. I have not included rereads just because I wanted them to be new books that I haven't spoken about before. That being said, two special mentions. I did at the beginning of the year read the Autonomy again for the second time, and yeah, it's a 5-star read. I love it, and I can't wait for the next one in the series. So yeah, I did read that. That was in January or February time of 2021. I remember I read it because I wanted to get my thoughts for the review that I made for the book. So yeah, I did read that again, but as I said, it was a reread, so I don't want to count it in this pile. And then also I last year reread my favourite book of all time, and it's Goodnight Mr. Tom by Michelle Magorian. I love this book so much. I literally cannot explain just how much I love this book. It has such a special and dear place in my heart, and I just found a bookmark in it. Yeah, it just has such a special place in my heart. It is one of my absolute favourites of all time. It is my favourite of all time. It's not one of, it is my favourite book of all time. So yeah, I treated myself to another reread last year and I thoroughly enjoyed it. 5 out of 5. Just the best book ever, in my opinion. Okay, so where to start? I'm going to start with The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. Now, I actually already did a review of this book on my channel. I did like a short review, so if you want to check out more, go right ahead. This book kind of made me fall in love a little bit with poetry. That's difficult to do because I don't read poetry at all, ever, and it's something I should branch out into, but I've always found that I haven't quite been intelligent enough to read poetry and fully get the full depth out of it, full enjoyment that one might be able to get out of it. This, as I said in my review, is told in verse. And it was just wonderful. It was such a heartwarming coming of age story about a young girl who lived in a very religious household with an extremely strict and religious mother, and her coming to terms with and kind of dabbling with a new romance, a new relationship in her life. And it just delved so deeply into the psyche of a young teenage girl. And obviously me, at one point being a young teenage girl, I found it extremely relatable, and it was just so poetically written. Literally, it was just beautiful. The writing was incredible, and I absolutely adored this book so much. I think I will probably do a reread again this year just because I loved it that much. Next, I will talk about Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. Now, this one took me by surprise actually because I didn't think that I was going to love it just quite as much as I did. This is a horror story about a young couple who move into an apartment. It's a very old-fashioned apartment complex in New York, and they have a couple of neighbours. Oh gosh, I can't remember their names. It's an older couple, and they just get a little bit too involved in Rosemary and her husband's lives, especially when Rosemary gets pregnant. Basically, there's just like demonic goings on, as you can tell by the crib with the devil's tail coming out of it. Yeah, just so eerie, and I honestly love this book so much. I will say though, there is a somewhat detailed rape scene in this book about being drugged and raped. So I do want to put that out there for trigger warnings if anyone gets triggered by that kind of content. That being said, I think it was maybe 3 pages and that was it. There was no more kind of graphic content warnings, anything like that. The ending took a huge turn for me that I did not expect at all, and I loved that. Normally with horror books, a lot of the time I can kind of predict what's going to happen just because I've read and watched so much horror, but this one completely took me by surprise and I absolutely loved it, so I would definitely recommend Rosemary's Baby. Absolute fantastic, haunting, eerie horror. It's just that the claustrophobia you felt within the apartment complex was really astounding, and the way that he wrote Rosemary and how isolated she felt, it was really fantastic. So yes, I would definitely recommend this. My next one, I don't know if it would be very predictable, but I did this year pick up ACOTAR for the very first time. Never read it before. I read Throne of Glass in 2020 and that was like an all-time favourite series of mine. I absolutely love Throne of Glass. So I thought, well, it's finally time to pick up ACOTAR. Like I said in previous videos, I didn't enjoy it as much as Throne of Glass, but I still really loved it. And A Court of Mist and Fury was up there with one of my top favourite reads of this year. It was a 5-star, hands down. I'm tempted to do a reread just of this book alone, which I know is bad. Yeah, I loved the development of Feyre in this so much. And obviously, we all love Rhys. Like, he was a man written by a woman, and you can tell. But I absolutely loved this. I would definitely recommend ACOTAR series. Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. Really loved it. As I say, I did love Feyre's character growth in this. It dealt quite a lot with like PTSD, which I really liked as well. I always enjoy when books delve into characters' mental health as well. I find it is fantastic representation. Court of Mist and Fury, I feel like it was somewhat predictable. There was an ACOTAR book bound to be in here somewhere, so really fantastic. I then absolutely loved, and this one completely took me by surprise, it was This Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayron. I get stunned by the cover as well. It's just so freaking beautiful. This, yeah, like I said, really took me by surprise. It is a YA fantasy with fantastic LGBT plus representation in it. It's about this young girl, I think she was about 16. She found out that her birth mothers, because she was adopted by 2 lovely women who she calls Mom and Mo to differentiate between the 2 mothers. And she kind of finds out that she has inherited this huge sprawling mansion. With it comes an entire apothecary and gardens full of extremely poisonous plants. Something I forgot to mention, quite an important part of the story, she has control over plants and vegetation. Like, she can control them, make them grow or die or whatever, like with her mind, which is just freaking cool. Basically, there's a story to why she was adopted. There's a story about where she came from and her like destiny. And I just freaking loved it so much. It just hit all the right spots. It ticked all the boxes for me. I loved all the characters. I especially loved the mums so much. I loved her parents so much, honestly. The entire time, they were just cracking me up. Just really fantastic representation. And yeah, I just loved it. I cannot recommend this book enough. It was fantastic. So yeah, This Poison Heart, really 10 out of 10. Really enjoyed it. Another fantastic fantasy book that I read this year, and it was one that I've been putting off for a while just for its sheer size, but it's doing the rounds on TikTok and it's doing it for good reason because it's fantastic, and it is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This was a fantastic high fantasy epic. It was incredible. It was just so amazing. Honestly, I did find the first, I'd say like 50 pages or so, I was a little bit lost at times, just because, as with any big high fantasy epic, there's a lot of information to take in at one time. But the depth the author has gone through to create this masterwork, it was just phenomenal. Honestly, I cannot recommend this book enough. And it's not often you get a big high fantasy that is a standalone, and I actually really enjoyed it. I enjoyed that it wasn't concise because it's a big book, but it didn't go on and on and on and I felt like every chapter was important because she had to fit it all into one book. So a lot of times when you're reading these big high fantasy, 10 book series, sometimes some of the chapters it just feels like filler almost, like it wasn't that interesting. But with this, I just found every single chapter had something that just gripped me and I loved it. I loved all of the characters, literally every single one. Again, fantastic LGBTQ representation. And it has dragons in. It's freaking dragons. It's really cool. Please do not let the size of this book put you off. It was fantastic. A little bit difficult to get into at the beginning, but well worth it if you stick it out. It was so, so good. 5 out of 5, one of my top 10 of all year. I also, this year, really truly discovered my love of Junji Ito. I did a little bit in 2020, but I read the rest of the books that I own from him this year. I'm going to stick these two as one point together. as like one book together just because they're both graphic novels from the same author. But these two books were incredible, phenomenal. It was Uzumaki and Tomi by Junju Ito. Absolutely incredible. I cannot recommend these graphic novels enough. It is just so eerie and the art style is terrifying. It's really scary. I'm going to try and find, there's one page in Uzumaki that I remember specifically, and I read this at the beginning of the year and I still remember it to this day. Look at this. Okay, this book's basically called Spiral into Horror, and it's about a town that becomes enraptured with spirals. I can't even, and this guy basically turns into a big spiral in a barrel. Like, look at that. Is that not terrifying? Like looking at this again, I want to reread them. The story was incredible, the artwork fantastic. It was so eerie, and it was basically stories that I found really stuck with me after I'd read them. Previously I said I think I read 23 graphic novels this year. These two are the ones that really stood out for me. And obviously Tomi as well is about a young girl who, she's not a girl, she's a creature, but she looks like a girl. But people who get close to her become infatuated to the point where they want to murder and kill her. So she dies a lot, but she doesn't die because she can like regenerate and regrow, and it's really freaky, really horrible at times. I'll try and find, oh my god, I just flipped to one page and it was really terrifying. I mean, look at this. She like grows back over and over. Like, look at that. It's terrifying, but amazing. Oh yeah, I cannot get over these two enough. Well worth the read. Absolutely loved it. Next, I don't actually have any physical copies of these books because I did listen to them on audiobook, but it is the Shadow of the Fox trilogy by Julie Kagawa. I loved this trilogy so freaking much. It's got to be up there with like my top of the year. I'm including them all together because every book was as good as each other, but especially the first book. The first book just hit different. It was so good, and if you listen to it on Audible as well, I would definitely recommend it. It's got 3 voice actors. It's got 3 voice actors, and every single one is as fantastic as the last. I loved it so much. Like, I'm really passionate about this series. The main character, Yumeko, I connected with so deeply. I just loved her character so much. Her development and character growth throughout all 3 books was phenomenal. She was so endearing and kind and strong-willed, and it's often, I find, in a lot of these like fantasy epics or fantasy series, that the women, not even the women, just all of the characters have to be very like hard, sharp characters, you know, kind of have a nasty bite to them. But Yumeko was just, she was so different. She was so loyal and forgiving and caring, and she just made everyone around her see the world the way she sees it, and really changed a lot of, you know, these really grisly warriors to see the beauty of the world. And I loved it. I loved it so much. Please, if you listen to any audiobooks this year, please let it be Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. Phenomenal. The whole 3-book series. The Shadow of the Fox, Soul of the Sword, and Night of the Dragon. Loved every single one. Phenomenal. Loved them all. Okay, so I've got 2 books left to talk about, and yeah, like I say, I don't have an absolute favourite, but they're just all so good. This next book I will talk about, but I will warn beforehand that it has a lot of trigger warnings in. It involves grooming of a young girl by a paedophile and sexually explicit content with a minor. So yeah, just to get that out there. But it was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This book blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. It was kind of one of those books that when you finish reading it, I just had to sit there for like 5 or 10 minutes and just kind of absorb what I just read. And yeah, even to this day, it was phenomenal. It's about the story of Vanessa, a young, I think was she 14? I think she was 14 when she first met her new English teacher. She went to a new school, saw the new English teacher, and he fell in love with her. Yeah, he became enraptured with her, and It was just the story of her and this, I think he was like 36, grooming a 14-year-old girl, and it was very difficult to read at times, but incredible. And it's split between two timelines of both Vanessa, one when she was 14 and one when she was 32, and it's just her kind of coming to terms with the trauma that was inflicted on her when she was a child, but not really necessarily realising that what she went through was trauma, kind of feeling like everything that she went through was platonic and that she wanted it as much as he did. And yeah, it was just a very difficult book to read, but fantastic. She really delved into the kind of inner workings of getting through PTSD and trauma, and I would definitely recommend it. But like I say, trigger warnings for those that get triggered by that kind of stuff. Obviously it was very difficult to read at times, but phenomenal. So yes, My Dark Vanessa. And then the last book of the year, I'm thinking it might be my favourite, but I think that's just because it's so recent in my mind. It was the last book that I read of the year, and I loved this book so much. It just makes me happy thinking about it. It was The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I loved this book so much, it made me cry. Happy tears. The top kind of blurb says it's like being wrapped up in a big gay blanket, and that is exactly what this book is. It follows the story of Linus Baker, who is a very official kind of government body worker, you know, wears the suits every day, works in like a small office, very to the book, follows the rules down to a T, very strict with himself, but really caring and sweet, but yeah, very strict. And he works for the kind of, I can't remember what the governmental, DCMA, the Department in Charge of Magical Youth. It's basically in this world there are magical beings that live side by side with humans, and a lot of the time those magical beings are given up by their parents for whatever reason, and they end up going to orphanages. I say orphanages, none of them ever get adopted, you know, it's just a home for children, and basically Linus works for the governmental body to make sure that those children are safe and protected. And he gets sent to a specific island, the House in the Cerulean Sea, that island there, and there is a group of fantastic children there. I loved every single one of them. The children were so endearing. Like, the children to me was one of the biggest parts of the story. And then there is Arthur Parnassus, who is the kind of I'd say owner, he's the caretaker of the home. He's like the father to their the children who live there, basically. He's the carer. And I loved every single character, but the children in this book really made it for me. I just loved the children so much. They were as big a part of the story as was the romance between Linus and Arthur. I just loved it. I love this book so much. Please read it. It is just the most happy feeling ever I've had reading a book. I find myself just smiling really goofily like all the time when I was reading it. Like, honestly, I read it I read it while waiting for a doctor's appointment, and I got several looks because I was just smiling and laughing to myself like an idiot. But honestly, it was just wonderful. It was just such a lovely, wonderful book, and I cannot recommend it enough. So yes, those are all of my top reads of 2021. I just loved all of them, but special mention I think to Priory of the Orange Tree, House in the Cerulean Sea, the Junju Ito books, and then My Dark Vanessa, and also Shadow the Fox. Those are my top reads of 2021, like top 5, I guess. A lot of fantastic reads, a lot of really good happy memories wrapped up in these books. And I would definitely recommend every single one that I'd mentioned here today. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found some fantastic books that you would like to read in the future. I hope I have swayed you to read some of my favourites, and I will see all of you lovely people in the next one. Alright, bye guys.